this is Tiernan Brady. I am the Global Director of Inclusion here at Clifford Chance. We're having a few Pride conversations with people who we have decided are the future of the firm, the next generation of leaders that we're going to have, which obviously was soul crushing to find out I was no longer on the list of the next generation of leaders. So I'm going to have to live with that pain and celebrate Pride with that burden on my shoulders. But we're going to get them all to introduce themselves and say hello to you before we have a little bit of a deeper dive into Pride and what it means for everyone. So, hi, Zareen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Really great to be here and happy Pride. I'm Zareen. I am a future trainee at Clifford Chance. I'll be starting at the firm in 2023. I'm also the LGBTQ Undergraduate of the Year 2020, an award sponsored by Clifford Chance, and an Attitude Magazine 2020 Trailblazer.
Nice to see you again, Zareen. And we are bouncing from London over to New York to Tom.
Hi, Tiernan. Yeah, thanks so much. My name's Tom Chapman. I'm in upstate New York right now, where I just graduated from Cornell Law School. But my partner and I will be moving to Washington, D.C. in August so that I can start at the Clifford Chance office in D.C. in October as a law clerk.
Fantastic. Welcome to the firm. I love the DC office. It's really lovely. I'm just saying. And we're literally going to drill the whole way to the other side of the world now, from Tom down to Dani in Sydney.
Hi, everyone. I'm here in beautiful Sydney, as Tiernan said. My name is Dani. I am one of the new grads here at the Sydney office in Clifford Chance. I started about 3 months ago, so still nice and fresh. And yeah, looking forward to talking to everyone tonight.
Okay, nice to meet you, Zareen, Tom, and Dani. The theme of our Pride campaign this year is change. And 2020 is probably undoubtedly the year of change, as is 2021 so far with the pandemic, and of course so many other issues around LGBT rights and equality. But it provides us with a platform now, 2021, to emerge from this year, to think about the resilience and reflect upon that, and come together to support LGBT allies. So I was wondering, could you talk about how you plan to instill change, either now in your future career at Clifford Chance, a very leading question, or just personally?
Yeah, change can be great, change can be exciting, and change can be really scary and hard as well. But I think for me, at least, keeping people at the center of any sort of change I go through is my way of dealing with change and thriving under change.
No, I think that's right, Dani. I do think a lot about, in the firm, that inclusion, it's easy to get stuck in the jargon and forget that actually inclusion is a who, it's not a what. And that actually what you really want people to do is make that journey to seeing that. So, I think you're exactly right. As one of the great takeaways, hopefully, of this year is, hopefully we noticed that it was a who a little bit more. Tom, what did you think about that? How do you plan to instill change into all of the rest of us as well as yourself?
But I'm reminded that last year, not only were we dealing with the early stages of the pandemic, as so many places in the world still are today, but here in the US, last summer, when I started with Clifford Chance as a summer associate, we were dealing with the struggle for racial and social justice as well. And it's just, there've been so many opportunities over the last year to really refocus our efforts. And I've been grateful that Clifford Chance has really been at the forefront of pushing for some of those things and redoubling our efforts in certain areas. I agree with Dani. One of the things I'm most excited about is to be back with colleagues and to actually meet people in person. So I can't wait for that. And I think one of the best ways that we can instill change in any organization, in any area of our lives, is to be fully present as ourselves. And so in theme with Pride, I think my personal goal is to make sure that I'm fully showing up to work as who I am in every aspect of my life, because that's the way that I'm going to give the best work and be the best support to my colleagues and have the best work-life balance. So, I'm really hopeful that as much as we've had to sort of reassess and rebalance over the pandemic and over the course of the last year, that I can bring that forward and make sure that, my life isn't segmented or siloed, that I'm fully myself when I come to work every day and, when I'm back at home.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, and it's interesting from the New York perspective. I mean, obviously there's just so many dimensions to inclusion this year between what happened last year for Pride and this year and all the global events specifically starting, many of them triggered in America. And a reminder that, these aren't one-off events, that inclusion is a permanent journey, and we're all expected to lean in, and we're all expected to, continue to campaign for it no matter what. So yeah, I'm with that one. I'm moving over to Zareen though now. I'm going to pick on you, Zareen. Actually, if we think about the last year, perhaps that even connects into the point that Tom is making. Is there anything, as we think about the journey of the last year, that has really changed your outlook on inclusion? Now, this is a leading question, obviously, because I would imagine the answer is yes, but it'd be really interesting to know what it is. Has there been anything that has changed, your outlook on inclusion? And we're going to start with you, Zareen.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, Tom's touched on it a little bit already, but I think living through the latest, I suppose, groundswell of the Black Lives Matter movement was definitely influential. As a Black queer woman, having a vested interest in kind of unpicking these systems, as well as, I, in my personal life, I had a little bit of experience working in the charity for 6 months, starting their first diversity and inclusion network. So both of those things taught me that inclusion has to be at all levels. It really can't work unless we incorporate everyone across the organization, because it's not just about, diversity, as in getting more people in who are of a diverse population, but rather inclusion is about making people feel comfortable and safe. And what that really means is baking practices that do that into the culture. So, in an LGBTQ context, making sure that pronouns, including pronouns in correspondence, is a very normal thing to do. Making sure that there are gender inclusive facilities at your organization, making sure that people are constantly able to engage in events that, further knowledge and understanding of the contemporary issues that minority communities face.
I suppose one of the things we do want to do, as well as thinking about what we thought about it ourselves, is about, what we're going to say to the rest of the firm and the people watching this. So, for the non-LGBT plus people, about what makes an ally, and how can they support the LGBT community, LGBT people and work colleagues and friends and family members. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to be an ally?
Yeah, I think principally there's no one fit all approach. I think something that I kind of have to remind myself of is that everyone is on their own journey, has their own process with this, and coming out. I think we probably all know this, but maybe not everyone does, that coming out is a continual process. I come out maybe several times a day. I just came out to a cashier at my local grocery store the other day while buying ice cream because she asked about my girlfriend. So, just because we're here talking as part of a Pride video doesn't mean that we'll be out to every colleague or in every context at work. And so to make sure not to make assumptions, to make sure that allies are creating space for LGBTQ plus people to speak for themselves, to have their own experiences, and to know that not every one queer person's experience will fit another's. So those are sort of my helpful tips that I sort of have to remind myself of sometimes too.
Yeah, no, and I think one of the assumptions piece is so real. I mean, and it's, a lot of the time, or most of the time, people don't mean anything by it. It's just about being able to go, actually know, and to correct people gently. Zareen, what advice would you give someone who you think wants to be an ally?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that Tom has said. I think the thing that I would add is for allies to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think that's really, really important. So, being comfortable with the idea that you won't know everything, but it's also important to seek out knowledge. And that can be through a number of ways. That can be through a Twitter post, through TikTok, through Instagram, an infographic, and then you can move on to more detailed explanations. But using the resources that we have, I think, to really understand different communities, so the LGBTQ communities, and the language that's used that are really important to people's personhoods, I think goes a long way, probably more than people realize. And I also think as well, part of being comfortable with being uncomfortable is engaging with the aspects of pride, and the issues that the LGBTQ community face that aren't really shiny and especially palatable. So engaging with really, really difficult issues. So, Black trans women and the difficulties that they face and the violence that they face. Engaging with how LGBTQ people, youth in particular, face homelessness, for example. So I think there's a lot of celebration with Pride. Definitely, I personally have been jumping up and down for the past 3 days of June. But I do think that part of being, again, comfortable with being uncomfortable is engaging with those difficulties. And with that as well, another thing that may be uncomfortable for people to think about is the different support that the most vulnerable of our community need. So like financial support for people, again, who face, Black trans women, especially, who face huge income gaps, can be really important. And that can be as simple as GoFundMe links that are, all around because of the nature of our systemic inequalities. So I think that's the kind of broad umbrella I would say for allies. Celebrate with us. It's definitely a joyous time, but also engage with the things that mean that the community in its diversity can have a flourishing personhood. I think that's what I'd say.
I think that's right. I think a really important point in this, sorry, as I wander for a second, is, I'm conscious Dani's in Sydney and Tom's in New York and Zareen, you're in London, and there are three reasonably brilliant places to be LGBT, not without their downsides, but in the scale of what the world looks like, most of the world doesn't look like London, Sydney, and New York for LGBT people. And I think sometimes we can relax into this idea that it's all fine, and that there's something inevitable about it all getting better, and it isn't inevitable. We need allies. I have it now. So the question we know you've got in advance. So because I'm dying to hear your answers on this one though, is and we go around our table on it. Who is your favorite LGBT icon, and why did you choose this individual? It's such a real pain question because there's just so many absolutely amazing potential icons, but we have to land somewhere. So we're going to start with you, Dani.
All right. I think this is my favorite question. At the risk of sounding a little bit basic, I have to say Lady Gaga, because, well, I think, growing up in my teens, when she first emerged onto the world stage, I was mesmerized, first of all, by her music. I love pop music, and she had such fun music. So I was a pretty big fan before I even realized how much of an ally she was. And I distinctly remember watching a awards ceremony where she was on stage wearing this fantastic red outfit that covered her face, and she went up to the stage and she thanked God and the gays for the award, and I knew at that point that she was my pop star. And then she came out with Born This Way and just all this really in your face sort of pro LGBT messaging. She spoke a lot about don't ask, don't tell in America. And I guess in terms of sort of the pop stars that people our age grew up with, she was by far, in my opinion, the most out and loud.
No, the gag is a good place to start, I would imagine, for all of us most of the time. So, I mean, and a lovely reminder about how you can be an ally through your work, which she has been and made sure to be it. So, a fine example. We're going to go from Sydney to New York. Tom.
This is so basic of me, but RuPaul to me was very important as I was first understanding that I was gay myself. And I think there's this risk of sort of seeing the queer community through a really commodified lens. If you look at a phenomenon like RuPaul's Drag Race, which is very commercial and now worldwide. But I think there's a lot to that that's really great. I think that RuPaul's empire has made queerness a little bit more accessible to people who otherwise wouldn't be able to access it. And for me, it was a window into the many different ways that there are to be gay. I grew up in a very rural area in a small town and didn't really know anyone else from the queer community. And I sort of had in my mind, like, well, there's one way to be gay. I don't really see myself in that community. What does that mean for me? And I think the more I sort of watched this program, the more I realized, like, oh, there's lots of different iterations to this. You kind of have to make your own way forward. So
no, I love it. I mean, and drag's so fabulously subversive as well. I mean, how to get a message across using your own artistry. Okay, I'm with both of these so far. I think we're going to have to go for three, Zareen. Who is on your list?
Yeah, so definitely difficult question. I thought about LGBTQ icons in my personal life who, are only a couple years older than me. But if I'm choosing someone who is known on a world stage, I'd say Angela Davis, Black feminist, lesbian icon, who I read a lot about in university, so much so that my essays started reading like Angela Davis fan mail, and I was told to tone it down a little bit. But honestly, I think a lot of my ideas about Black womanhood as a Black woman, as a Black queer woman, and understanding how I fit into the world with so many different intersections, with so many different, I suppose, opinions on things like housing, on things like social equality, etc. Angela Davis was so important to me. She actually came to Cambridge, where my university was, and it was like a superstar had descended on our tiny little old-fashioned town. It was amazing. So I think, yeah, Angela Davis, if you ever see this, I'm very much for you. I'm very much a fan.
I think three very good choices. I think three very inspirational people. And again, brilliant advocates, people who are prepared for, to campaign and understand that you need to be visible. You need to champion something. These things don't happen themselves. So, and you can hear that from all of the words that you've talked about today as well. So thank you very much for the time, Tom, Dani, Zareen. It's a pleasure. Absolutely brilliant to get to chat you all, and have a happy and fantastic Pride, and the same to everybody watching.